Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Doctor Who Am I as he travels to conventions and arrive at episode 536. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How goes it, guys?
Pretty good. You guys watching anything special recently?
I've been catching up on a lot of Criterion shows, trying to get through my list, which was, the Criterion Challenge from 2021.
You're about 2 years behind.
Yes, at this rate, it'll be 2025 before I finish, but I am working on it. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff I've never seen before, which is cool. I watched Stagecoach today.
I love Stagecoach. God, I love that movie.
You know, it's funny. It's a great film.
I'm a sucker for classic westerns, too.
It really is. It's a great film, amazingly put together. All these years, I was aware that this is where the Raiders stunt comes from, with Indy under the truck.
Yeah.
I've seen bits and pieces of the clip from Stagecoach with that stunt. It wasn't until today, watching the film in its entirety, that it's not John Wayne under that stagecoach.
No.
I mean, I knew it wouldn't have been actually John Wayne. It would have been a stuntman,
right.
but
no, it's not.
I always thought it was his character.
No, it's not his character.
It's some Apache Indian jumps on the thing and then goes under the wheels, and I'm like, oh, learn something every day.
What about you, Keith?
I got one episode left of the live-action Cowboy Bebop, and I have absolutely loved it so far. It's been so well done and so good. But I'm still, I could still screw it up in the last episode, but I've been okay with all the changes that I remember from the anime and have thoroughly enjoyed it.
I feel like this is the point where we should probably sit down and have a talk.
Am I going to be disappointed?
I feel like this is the point where we should sit down and have a talk. It's not disappointing from the standpoint that they screwed it up. It's disappointing from the standpoint that we're not going to get more.
Yeah. Well, I knew that, which makes me a little worried that they decided to leave it on a cliffhanger, thinking they're going to get another season.
This is the point where we should probably sit down and have a talk.
Anything else?
No, that's been about it.
I
read a Star Wars book. Yeah.
I was in and out of consciousness most of the week after my surgery, so I didn't get a chance to watch much. I tried to watch Elvis, but I'm going to have to go back and try again because I slept through parts of it. And then I actually watched a documentary called The Long Shot. Have you guys seen this? It's a Netflix documentary, and it's about a guy that was accused of murdering a girl, and he claimed he didn't do it, and what his attorney said that he's going to get him off. And it was determined that the guy's alibi ends up being that he was at a Dodgers game on the night that it happened, which is like 100 miles from where this actually happened at. And so the lawyer goes through like dozens of Dodgers tapes in order to try to find this guy on tape so he can prove that this guy was at the game with his daughter. And he's kind of giving up hope because they haven't found anything. And then somebody realized that on that day, or somebody remembered that on that day, they were shooting an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm for HBO. And they remembered where they were shooting, and it was during a live game. So they were having to, kind of regulate the flow of people walking up and down the aisle. And anyway, he gets permission from HBO to go through those tapes, and he finds the guy on the tape. And so it ends up that, and another bit of circumstance with the cell phone calls that he had made got him off, which was really, really, really interesting. And they've got Larry David's on there talking. He doesn't do a lot, but he makes some little funny remarks. The PA, who's the guy that he wasn't supposed to let anybody walk through at the time that Larry David's coming up the steps, and he just ended up he happened to let this guy and his daughter through to get back to their seats as Larry David's coming up, and that's why he ends up being on the camera. And so it was just like a complete fluke that had happened, but it's a really, really interesting documentary. That's it.
Of course, we'll be gearing up for our Oscar watches as we're taking part in the Pod versus Pod contest again this year.
We are?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I know we are.
Have you missed a meeting?
Did you join the Facebook group yet?
We're going to win this year so that the other team can watch a maybe not so crappy movie. I don't know.
Depends on the movie we choose.
I feel it. This is our year.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Witt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
All right, let's move on to news.
Well, they just announced today that season 9 is going to be the next Blu-ray collection. That's John Pertwee's season.
Yay!
Yay!
I told you so. I did realize, though, you guys probably saw later, I did realize that the Colin Baker season that I said was coming out this year actually came out last year. So I'm kind of 2 for 3, but
you still predicted it.
I did, but
it being released.
The William Hartnell set came out in between those, so and I didn't predict that one. So
I just appreciate that. I mean, for those of you who know him, we all know that Glenn is kind of a very insufferable know-it-all.
Okay.
But what I really appreciate is the fact that he saved his.
He went back and found the screenshot.
I did.
Yeah, screenshot the images that said, "This is what's coming out."
From 2 years ago.
From 2 years ago, and then shared it with us today and went, "Huh, I was right." And it's like, yes, Glenn, we get it.
As I was going back through that thread, I also saw where I was talking about what they would probably do with some of the Hartnell and Troughton stuff. And we may have talked about this when they released the details of the Patrick Troughton Series 2. Was it Series 2 that we're getting? Yeah, it must be.
Yes.
And then I had said that I almost guarantee they're going to go ahead and release either Season 1, sans Marco Polo, and put that truncated retcon that they put on, or not retcon, reconstruction that they put on the beginning box set, or they were going to release Season 2 and just give us a reconstruction version of the Crusade, which is what they ended up doing as well. So I even kind of got that right as well.
It's so insufferably frustrating because I can't argue with you. You went and got the proof. You backed it up, and it's like, yeah, I know. It's like Harriet Jones. Yes, we know who you are.
I feel like I'm tooting my horn too much.
No, don't you dare stop. Are you kidding? Like, I don't rub it in every time it's an Easter Saturday? I mean, come on.
Well, that's true.
But yeah, coming soon to a Blu-ray near you. Day of the Daleks, Curse of Peladon, the Sea Devils, the Mutants, and the Time Monster. Very excited.
So what that'll leave? That leaves. Well, for us, that will be what, season 2? No, season 3.
It's season 3. Well, yes, season 3 because they'll
Season
have 2,
3
3,
for
and 4.
us because it's season 9 for the UK.
So
Correct.
we still need season 1 of his.
So yeah, season 1's the only one.
1 and 5.
No, wait.
Yeah, 1 and 5.
Did he have 5 seasons? Oh, he did have 5 seasons. I was thinking he only had 4.
Nope. 5.
Okay.
Yeah, we have all. Well, we will have all of Joe. We don't have any of Pertwee with Sarah Jane or any of Pertwee with Liz.
Liz Shaw, yeah.
At least not yet.
Not yet.
I'm kind of surprised they haven't done the first season yet, considering, the first story is already on Blu-ray.
Right. Spearhead's...
That's an easy conversion.
Yeah, Spearhead was shot on
Pop those
film,
discs
so
out and
it's
put them
already
into
been
an-
converted.
Yeah. Change the artwork on it and call it good.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the impetus, and I hesitate to say this, but since
Getting the bonus features recorded with
yeah,
Katie Manning while she's still with us.
yeah,
Yeah.
since we don't have Elizabeth Sladen or
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of
Caroline.
that because both of those passed away already. Both those gals.
And a lot of the extra unit actors, are still around that are more prominent later in the series.
Right. Yeah, because they can bring John Levine and oh gosh, Mike Yates. What was his?
Richard Franklin.
Thank you,
Richard Franklin.
in to do some of that.
Which they did, it looks like, for this box set.
Oh, did they? I didn't see that. That's cool.
Oh, in the trailer, there's a shot of John Levine walking with what's
that's
his
right.
face?
Yeah. Okay, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Toby Haydock.
Yeah, Toby Haddock.
yeah.
What'd you think of the? What'd you think of the trailer? The the story that they put surrounding that. I have to admit, I teared up a little bit when Joe uses the sonic screwdriver, and then, or not sonic screwdriver, sonic lipstick, and then looks up and says, "Thanks, Sarah Jane." Aw,
Yeah.
so nice. And then the little nod to Cliff at the end. Anyway, he just let's see, he passed away. Was it just last year that he died?
Yeah, he was just recently.
Stuart Bevan. Yeah. 2 nice little moments surrounded by a really kind of neat little story about them finding the little sea devil egg. I think the first spinoff that RTD needs to do is Defenders of the Earth. Call it Defenders of the Earth, and have Joe Grant, and just make it like a Sarah Jane Adventures, but all like Earth-based with aliens that are here, that come here already.
We can even have Ace go up, be a part of that.
Have who?
Ace.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm down. Bring it. I just want to reiterate a thought that I saw on Facebook, which was these are not trailers; these are canon.
Yeah.
They are until they aren't.
Well, they picked up the thread from the 7th Doctor one with Ace for Power of the Doctor.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. They are until they aren't.
They all say, who is Doctor Who?
Do you collect Doctor Who? Do you have Doctor Who items and you don't know you collect Doctor Who? For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world, tune in to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast. I am Larry Van Rosbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years. With popular features like collection protection and the most outrageous offer, we have a lot of fun. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point Network podcast.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams. Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
that also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our Doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time round, putting the wrong Doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Travelling the Vortex.
All right, well, nothing else in the news this week, so should we move on to our review?
Doctor, who am I?
I feel like I don't want to regard myself as a fan. I'd rather be the one who's worshipped.
Worshipped or blamed?
I think at the end of the day, probably both. I wrote The Eighth Doctor, played by Paul McGann.
It's a bit of a responsibility, I think, that we have. You know, stories are powerful. Mythologies are powerful.
My job was to write a TV movie pilot with the hope that it would spawn a new American Doctor Who series.
The American fans, they are the diehards.
There's a whole community of people that do this.
They love this thing that society says you shouldn't love as much as you do.
I didn't go to conventions for a very good reason.
Be nice.
I thought the fans would kill me.
The Doctor being half human. Please punch me in the face.
People universally went after the script.
I got physically assaulted by someone who was so angry at the idea that the Doctor would kiss.
No sex, please. He's Matthew Jacobs.
My father was an actor. He was in an early Doctor Who adventure called The Gunfighters.
It'd be fantastic on The Gunfighters, because you're going to go back to your boyhood memories.
I really don't want to do the Gunfighters panel. It's freaking me out. I was pouring myself into that character. I got so close. And then I got left behind. Maybe I'm regenerating.
Doctor Who has helped a lot of people find who they are.
This is a giant family, and it's full of love. The sense of community and companionship.
That's what I enjoy the most about it.
You go for the fans.
You're a part of this now.
I think at the end of the day, I'm a bigger fan than I knew. At some point or other in our lives, we all ask the same question. Who am I?
An infamous Doctor Who screenwriter is reluctantly dragged into the American Whoniverse in this funny and moving documentary about finding family in the unlikeliest of places.
This was so well done.
It's amazing how much of a journey he actually goes on with this.
Mm-hmm.
Because him and some of the people he initially starts talking to come off a little unlikable. And you really do start to grow to like most of them throughout the movie. Especially him.
It's a little reminiscent of Shatner's Get a Life book, where he specifically focuses on the Star Trek conventions and going from a thing that he kind of sort of tolerated to actually enjoying going to. And watching Jacobs kind of go through this, and maybe not without reason for, kind of wanting to keep it at arm's distance, at least initially, being blamed, which we've always said is, a load of nonsense when it comes to the Doctor Who movie. But,
right.
Being blamed for some of the choices that were made in it. And,
well, to be fair, I think blame is a strong word, but he is the reason for the things that are revealed in that movie that people don't like about that movie. So, I mean, the onus is on him. It is on his back for that. I think blame's a strong word because we don't have issue with that. We don't have issue with those trying those ideas. They didn't end up going anywhere. They didn't end up exploring that anymore because there was such a backlash. But I don't think that, I certainly think that, oh gosh, what's the producer?
Philip Siegel.
Yeah, Seymour. Or Siegel. Siegel. I think he's sort of, in this movie, when he goes to see him, when Jacobs goes to see him, I had sort of hoped that here's where I'm going to come from for this, because I'm going to take this a little different. I wasn't as impressed with this. I think it's a good documentary. I just had hoped that Jacobs had gone further. I had hoped that Jacobs had come around to more than he did. I sort of felt like in this whole documentary, I think he feels like he's going through the motions, not like he's like faking his sort of comeback and realization that, it isn't as bad. He didn't need to keep fandom at arm's length, because he really didn't. But I'm not convinced by at least his demeanor or his presentation by the end of this movie that he's really kind of come around as much as I wanted him to. And maybe that's because my expectations of that were higher. And you can't fake that just to make a good documentary, because you're trying to be as faithful to reality as possible. But unfortunately, because he doesn't come back around so much, I didn't feel as fulfilled as the Shatner one, where I think you feel like, although maybe Shatner kind of, played it up a little bit because he's more of an actor, but I really kind of felt like Shatner had come back around, more so, and was a lot more warm about it. I just didn't feel like that from Jacobs, but I don't think it's entirely his fault, because I think that's just sort of his personality. I think he's one of those kind of guys that no matter who you are, he kind of has he seems like an introvert, and he has a bit of a kind of standoffish personality. And so to me, it felt like this, I had hoped this would go further, and I don't feel like it did. It wasn't as fulfilling as I felt that it could have been, but again, you can't force that kind of thing. I think what I really enjoyed about it was I hadn't been to a convention, and specifically a Doctor Who convention, for so long. It was nice to see, convention goers and costumes and that kind of stuff. So that was neat.
It was good. We'll have to go back. It could have, focused a little bit more on, while it rightfully so, focused on the fans. It didn't seem to focus on as much on his interactions with a lot more of them. I think if they could have done that and see him warm up to the people that are coming up to talk to him, it would have maybe made his, the ending feel a little more earned.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is if you're going to go to,
that's the problem.
Well, that's just it. If you're going to shoot that much video to get this kind of story, to tell this kind of story, it makes me wonder if they didn't have enough of that interact, because they have some of it, but I'm wondering if they didn't have enough. And maybe it is the documentary makers, problem. I mean, I guess Jacobs was one of the directors on this, but maybe it was their issue that they didn't use enough of that if it's there. But if they didn't use it, it almost makes me think there wasn't enough of that. And so, again, that kind of
received as warmly
exactly,
as
it wasn't as
hope.
Right, because if he had been received more warmly by more people, they probably would have put that in the documentary. But because it is so few and far between, I just feel like maybe they didn't get everything out of that they wanted, and they just did what they could with what they got. I don't know. I could be wrong. I think it's a good movie, and I enjoyed hearing from Daphne Ashbrook again. I enjoyed hearing from Paul McGann a little bit in there, and I kind of would have liked to have heard more from them, but this story isn't about them. It's about Jacobs, so it makes sense that they're not in it more than they are. But
it's interesting from the standpoint that, I first of all, we'll have to go back and rewatch it and do frame by frame, because Mel and I have to be in the background of pretty much every single shot that they filmed, because we were at Galley the year that they did this. I'm looking at these people in costumes going, I remember that. I have photos of that person. So we're there somewhere.
Well,
as far as
only half of that. Only half of that is Galley. The other is Elihu.
Yeah, the other is Elihu.
Some of that was shot at Elihu.
Now, the Elihu sequences were not in, because we haven't made it out there yet. I'm working on it, Ken. But yeah, the Galley ones we are. And that's the convention that I actually caught up with him and talked to him, and kind of gave him my thesis on we wouldn't have New Who without Doctor Who the movie, because there's so much that the new series borrows from it. And I had this conversation with him, and he seemed genuinely touched, but there was no camera crew around at the time that I told him that. So I don't know if they'd already knocked off for the day, or if they were shooting B-roll somewhere else in the building, or what. He certainly didn't say to me, wait right here. Let me go grab these guys, and you can say that again on camera.
Well, what's interesting is that is reiterated to him on camera by somebody else.
Yeah. So I felt justified in my opinion going, oh, thank goodness I'm not the only one that feels this way.
Well, and was it him that kind of starts to bring that up initially? Or am I remembering that wrong? At one of the panels he was at.
I think it's in defense when the people's house that he goes to are kind of openly attacking him on the couch.
Well, the one guy for sure.
Seemed
The
an odd
other guy was being
inclusion.
a little more diplomatic, but
Yeah. It seemed an odd inclusion for that bit, honestly.
Well,
maybe if you open with that and then go to the con, you can see the progression of him a little bit more.
Well, and that was another thing is I felt that the pacing and the structure of it could have been improved upon. It felt at times it felt a bit disjointed. I think that I am not a documentary filmmaker, but I think having been in the news business, I think we're at least a little more qualified at this than even maybe real movie or fictionist movie productions. But I think I would have chosen to edit the narrative a little differently than they did in this, because it just felt a little conjoined and didn't flow as smoothly as I think it could have.
Mm-hmm. It did seem to jump all over the place.
I'll agree with that as well. I also think it was interesting that they actually went to Eric Roberts' house.
Yeah.
I mean, color me shocked. It's like, oh, you're in this? Okay.
And how fondly he talked of the conventions and the
Yeah.
films.
Well, he talks fondly at conventions when he's not there.
I'm hoping, I don't know, I'm really hoping that Eric Roberts, like Shatner before him, just had a couple of bad experiences and has started to warm up, because I have another friend that went and saw him I think he was at a Crypticon, and he told him how much he enjoyed his version of the Master. And he says Eric Roberts lit up and started talking and how much he loved doing it. Maybe it's the Big Finish effect that now that he's done it a little bit more, that he's more comfortable with it and more open to it. I don't know.
I've heard the same. I've heard the same, that in the last 5 or 10 years, he's been a lot more receptive at conventions. So.
Maybe he just had a bad flight at that galley.
That's entirely possible.
He didn't even show up at our time Eddie that he was supposed to be at.
Well, that's true. I forgot he was supposed to be there.
Yeah, he was a no-show. Anyway,
but no, I enjoyed the look at fandom. I think we were portrayed as a group very well. I think.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
That was certainly a joyous thing to see on camera. And that god awful Marriott carpet that brought back a lot of fun memories for me.
Yeah, there was scenes that I was familiar with, and I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but having been to Galley before and seeing, like you said, that carpet and the lobby and the foyer and all that hallway, that kind of goes and wraps around. I was like, oh yeah, I've been there, been in that hotel, been at a convention there, as a matter of fact.
And as someone who has not been to Galley, it kind of felt like I was there to some extent. Like I kind of got a good gist of what it would be like to go to Galley, a good feel for it.
Well, get your tickets, a couple weeks away.
Don't think that's going to happen.
If I win
Jodie Whittaker.
If I win the lottery, and they just announced Chris Chibnall, by the way.
Yep.
So if I win the lottery in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, then I'll buy tickets and hotel rooms for everybody.
That's a date. It'll be my turn to be the guy on the couch yelling at Chibnall. So why did you do this again?
I just hope people are nice.
I think they will be for the most part. I think Galley's a pretty friendly crowd.
I think so too.
I thought, on the whole, I thought it was a well-produced. I agree with all the points that, maybe it jumped around a little too much and it lacked a little bit of focus, but I thought it was well-produced. And certainly, I'm glad to hear that, Keith, you had you felt like you were there reaction, because I know I certainly did. And that's something I was going to ask is, on Glenn's part, if it was maybe just seeing TARDIS Tara and Sean Lyons and all these Ken Deep and all these people that I kind of sort of know through the convention, and seeing them show up in this documentary made it a little more of a familiar atmosphere, But I'm glad to hear that you had kind of a similar reaction, even though you hadn't been. And we really need to remedy that. We really need to get you there.
I kind of know of these people and, have followed them on social media. So it's cool to know some of those faces already as they show up, or know the name of oh, I've heard that name. That's what they look like. Oh, okay. Cool. I also thought it was fascinating, and I kind of wish there was a little more of it, but I know why they didn't include it was him talking about, his thought process behind the writing of it and why he wrote what he wrote. Not that we have any issues with it, but it's always fascinating to hear those sort of, thought processes and, we were trying to do this and I wrote it like this because of this. And I thought that was really interesting to listen to.
But again, that was another thing that I think they could have gone further with, and they could have been a lot more of. Yeah, they could have been a lot more. They could have driven down to that more and gotten a lot more out of him for where he was coming from when he was putting together. Because with what they gave us, it was almost like whetting my appetite, and I felt like that was where I wanted more, and I felt like they didn't spend enough time there. Basically allowing him to justify his motives, and I didn't feel like there was enough of that either. So
on the other side of that coin, though, I also didn't like the guy on the couch attacking him about it all either. So, and that was kind of in that same segment.
I didn't like it either, but I kind of also felt like that was necessary. But again, and I think Sean put it, or one of you guys put it very well, that maybe that should have been sooner in the narrative of everything, so that you could come around and kind of soften that a bit. But I like the fact that you've got to have some conflict when you're putting something like this together, because you have to have the other side saying, this is what you ruin this. This is what we don't like. You have to have that so that you can, give your view of it. And they utilized that. They were right to utilize that. They just utilized it, I felt, in the wrong place. So
yeah.
I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound like I'm tearing the documentary down, because I think it's a fine documentary, and I think they do a good job. There was a lot more I wanted from it.
Yeah, I think you have to toe the line between some of that, because while I agree, I would have absolutely loved more about the writing process and his justification for things and where he was pulling from. Then you start to get into is this a documentary about Matthew Jacobs coming back to Who fandom through conventions, or is this a documentary about the making of Doctor Who the movie? And I understand that you can go too far to one extreme or the other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I would agree that could happen.
And now, as somebody who loves Doctor Who the movie and has gone over all of the bonus features multiple times,
this was new stuff I hadn't heard before.
Exactly. I could have totally had more of that and been fine with it, especially if it was then used as bullet points to maybe counter some of the, we didn't like this argument. But, I kind of get why maybe they shied away from it.
It was also fascinating listening to the one guy talk about the point of why he thought fandom was so adverse to the kiss. That makes the Doctor not theirs anymore. That was absolutely fascinating and a really good point.
Yeah.
I thought that was spot on.
That's true.
It's interesting that I completely disagreed with him when he said it, but I was also like, wow, really? You feel that way? I mean, okay, I guess kind of I can see where you're coming from, but that's what's upset you?
Level.
Yeah, no, I it totally is. I was a little surprised too that they spent as much time on the gunfighters. And I don't want to say that it wasn't necessary, because obviously that experience with his dad being on Doctor Who and him going to the set shaped a lot of what, would become Matthew Jacobs' screenwriter. But it really kind of seemed like they kept going back to the well with that one. And that for me was a little frustrating. It's like, okay, we get it.
Well, I wonder if we feel that way because they did that to kind of, as you said, establish where he had come from as a writer. But I think also they revisited that. I think the reason it feels that way is because that was one of the panels that he was not presenting, but he was part of with Steve Stransky. That was what they were doing there. And so they kind of had to come back around to it there where he was talking about it. So I don't feel like they did. I think they did enough with that, but I don't think they did. I didn't feel like it was too much, or they were revisiting that well too often. I could be wrong, but I didn't get that impression from it. Of course, I love the gunfighters. So
Glenn's over here chomping at the bit, going, "Why don't you talk more about the gunfighters?
More.
I want the documentary making of that one." Gunfighter recollections from a 7-year-old. Yes, more of this. No, I just feel like maybe it had. That was, for me, that was an element of the pacing that may have been just a little off for the way that was structured. But I said, on the whole, I was a big fan of this documentary. I thought it was a very touching tribute, and I appreciated it.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you got coming up next on the schedule, Sean?
Well, coming up next on the schedule, we go back into the war. Which war? The Time War. I forgot which war we were going to for a moment. We start Act 3 with The War Doctor Begins, Founded in Fire, which is the first box set. And not John Hurt, correct? This is the other guy?
Correct. This is... correct. Oh, gosh. His name escapes me. But yeah, this is the guy that sounds like John Hurt, but not actually John Hurt.
Early War Doctor, so younger version of John Hurt, if you will.
Yeah.
And then we are going to move on from there into a fun reoccurring segment for this year, celebrating the 60th anniversary, which it seems weird to say that in a way, but it is 2023, so we are officially in the 60th year, although Glenn will argue pedantics on that one.
No, we're in the year. We are. I would agree with that.
It's not the millennium all over again?
No. You don't have to worry
about that's right.
You don't have to worry about a 0-year argument here.
That's right. I'm whipping that dead horse. But we're going to talk about the evolution of the diamond logo and how much we'll probably just fan all over the new one, because I think we're all on the same page with that.
Right.
But we have several of those kind of tie-ins planned that we will sprinkle throughout the course of the year. So you can look forward to that. Got some book reviews, got some recaps of classic episodes, got some comic stuff coming up. So all good.
Lots of fun stuff on the horizon. Oh, we always do fun stuff. What am I talking about?
We do always do fun stuff.
We do.
And you can find us on our website, travelingthevortex.com. If you get any value out of this podcast, please consider putting some value back into it. You can do that by clicking on the Patreon link on the website and consider supporting us. When you become a patron of the podcast, you unlock more audios and specials by us. In fact, just recently, last week, we've uploaded a what we're calling the home version of the Great Traveling the Vortex quiz show. We are doing the Great Traveling the Vortex trivia quiz, and it's a series of 10 questions. And we give you the questions, and then we come back and give you the questions along with the answer. And that's something that we're going to probably try to put up once a month. So we'll have one, and each of us will take turn hosting one of those. And so it's just a fun little way to test your Doctor Who trivia knowledge. And then, of course, we've got other reviews and other things, lots of fun things planned that are headed that way as well. So it definitely gets your best value for your buck that way. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to podcasts, and make sure you join in the conversations in our listeners forum on Facebook. Before we close this one, anything else we need to touch on before we leave? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.